Now that we have the basics of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing now, just regular expressions, I want to move on to the good stuff, the solving the equations part here. So what we're going to focus on specifically today is solving equations and just getting comfortable with adding and subtracting and moving things around just by adding and subtracting, okay? And so remember, when we're solving equations, they'll always give us a variable or a letter. Usually it's x, but it could be any letter, so just be prepared. But our goal for this is we want to get x by itself, okay? And so we got to do whatever we can to get x just to be by itself on one side of the equal sign. So remember, whatever we do to one side, we're going to have to do to the other side. So if one side we decide to add 6, we're going to have to add 6 on the other side of the equal sign too. And just to refresh, remember that we want to use opposite operations. And when I say operations, I mean like the adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. That's our way of saying, that's our general name for what we call those. We call those math operations, the adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing. So we use opposite operations to cancel things out. So adding gets rid of a subtraction sign, and a subtraction sign gets rid of an addition sign. So those two guys are opposites. And then tomorrow we'll look at the multiplying and dividing. So let's look at an example here. And I have here number 1. And remember, our goal is we want to get x by itself. So think about x wants to stay at home and just hang out at home and be by himself. So we got to get rid of everything around x. So how can I get rid of this negative 6? So if I have a subtracting 6, what I want to do is I want to look for the opposite. So if this is a minus 6, I'm going to add 6 here. And remember what I said here in the second point, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. So if I add 6 on the left side, I'm going to have to add 6 on the right side. We know that negative 6 plus 6 is 0, so it's just going to cancel out, right? And what's 12 plus 6? It's 18. And then I have an x here that's still at home, and now x gets to hang out all by himself at home. So x equals 18. Let's look at number 2. So number 2, I have a y plus 7 equals negative 9. So here's an example where it's not x, but that's okay. We just treat it the same way. So if y wants to stay home by himself, what do I have to get rid of? What's around y? I got to get rid of this plus 7 here, right? So if it's a plus 7, to get rid of it, I'm going to subtract 7 on both sides. What happens to these 7s? They cancel out. Negative 9 minus 7 is negative, what? 16. I bring this y down, and there's nothing around it anymore, so I can box it. Okay. Number 3, I change it up. I put the x on the right side this time. Doesn't make a difference though. It's still okay. We still treat it the same way. Okay, so the x is a positive, so don't worry about that. But let's look at the sign for the 5. So the 5 is positive or negative? It's positive, okay? It's positive because there's no minus sign right here. See where my little circle is right here? If it was a negative, they would have put a minus sign in between. So we assume it's a positive, 5. So I'm just going to put a little plus to help us out. So how can I get rid of this 5? I'm going to subtract 5 on that side, subtract 5 on that side. The positive 5 and the negative 5 cancel out. 2 minus 5 is negative 3. And there we go. I just bring my x down. Final answer there. Now I'm changing it up here in 4, 5, and 6, or 4 and 5 for sure. My x is negative this time. So we're still going to treat it the same way. That's okay. But let's do this. What do we know when there's no number in front of x? What do we know that number really is? We know it's a 1. Okay, so this is really a negative 1x. And so let's not worry about this negative 1x for right now, though. I just wanted to put that 1 there because it's going to help us out later on. But let's get rid of the 6. Okay, so I have a positive 6 here, so we know from examples 1 through 3, to get rid of it, I'm just going to take the opposite sign. The side cancels out, so I have 4 minus 6 is negative 2. And then I still have this negative 1x here. And so if this ever happens where you end up having to have a negative 1 instead of just a positive 1, so remember, because x wants to stay by himself and we don't like having that negative there, so we got to get rid of this negative 1 somehow. So there's 2 ways you could do it. I'm going to show you one way right now. And so if you want to just get rid of this negative 1, what you can do is you can multiply a negative 1 to both sides. So multiply it to there and multiply it to there. So negative 1 times negative 1x is going to turn the x into a positive, which is what we want, okay? Because negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1, right? Okay, and then negative 1 times negative 2 on the right side is just going to turn it to be a positive 2. And so there's our final answer for that. Okay. Number 5, here we are, 21 minus x. So my x is negative again. We know that because it's the sign that's right in front of it. So let's figure out what the sign right in front of 21 is. Positive or negative? There's no minus sign, so I'm going to assume it's positive. Okay. So to get rid of that 21, subtract it on the left side, subtract it on the right side. These guys cancel, so I have a negative x still on that side, and then 28 minus 21 is 7, but I have this issue again because I have this negative x, so we know this is really a negative 1x. I drew a light negative 1 there if you could see it. So to get rid of it, let's multiply a negative 1 here and a negative 1 there. So this is going to be negative 1 times negative 1, positive 1x, negative 1 times 7, negative 7, and I'm done right there. Okay? Remember, if you guys have any questions about this, I think maybe starting with number 3, 3, 4, 5 is a little weird. Write them down. We can look at them tomorrow in class, so no worries. But let's look at number 6 here. So this one's a little more involved. And so I have this negative that's right here, and if there's nothing written in between the negative and the parenthesis, we assume that it's a negative 1. And so if you end up with a situation that looks like this, I'm going to erase the 1 here for you. If you end up with a situation like this, basically what it's asking you to do is to, you could write that 1 there, distribute that negative 1 to everything in the parenthesis. Okay? I don't care about the 2, so don't worry about the 2 right now. I'm even going to cross it out right now. Okay? Don't worry about the 2 right now. Just worry about that negative 1 and distributing it in. And you only have to distribute it into the parenthesis. Don't worry about the 6. I just want you to take care of it inside the parenthesis. So I have negative 1 times 3 is negative 3. Negative 1 times y is going to be negative 1y. Let's make this a minus so it doesn't look like multiply. And then equals 6. And then I still have this 2 here, so don't forget to drop it down. Rewrite it here for us so that we don't forget it's there, okay? So the reason why I scratched out is because the only thing that gets multiplied is that negative 1. Remember, order of operations, you're not going to do 2 minus 1 first. You got to take care of the parenthesis. And the parenthesis is asking us to go and distribute that negative 1 in. So that's why we didn't do anything with the 2. So here we go. Let's collect like terms. So I have 2 minus 3 is negative 1 minus 1y, so I could just leave it like this. Equals 6. Got to get rid of this negative 1, so I'm going to add it. Add it. Negative 1 plus 1 is going to cancel out. And I'm left with a negative 1y still. 6 plus 1 is 7. And here we go. Got to get rid of that negative 1 attached to the y, because I just want plain y, not negative. So distribute negative 1 times negative 1y is going to give me positive y equals negative 1 times 7 is going to give me negative 7. So answer for this guy is y equals negative 7. Okay. Let's try one more like this. And we have 11 equals 7 minus 1 minus q. I have this again here, the minus next to the parentheses, so remember it's really saying I have a little minus 1. I'm not going to do anything with the 7 yet. Okay, order of operations, take care of the parenthesis first, and the parentheses telling me to distribute, so don't worry about that 7. So take this negative 1 here and go 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 minus q is positive q. And then bring that 7 down, bring that 11 down. And so let's collect like terms. So 7 minus 1 is going to be 6, right? I got to move the 6 over. Okay. And so I have q equals 11 minus 6 is 5. And that's it. I don't have to do any multiply by negative 1 because the q is already positive. Okay. So last thing I want to show you is that sometimes you may not be sure, you just want to check your answer. What you should be able to do is take whatever you solve for, so whatever you get as your final answer, and plug it back into the original problem, and it will let you check to see if you're on the right track. So let's do that with, let's check that with numbers. Let's see with number 1. So let me change the color of this so we know it's the check part here. Okay, so number 1, so I got x is 18, right? So I'm going to go back to the original problem, x minus 6 equals 12, and now that I know that x really means 18, I'm going to plug that in. 18 minus 6 equals 12, okay? I just rewrote the equation, but wherever I saw an x, I plugged in 18, so 18 minus 6 equals 12. 18 minus 6 we know for sure is 12, so yes, 18 is a good answer. Let's see it with number 2 here. So wherever I see a y, I'm going to plug in negative 16. So here's a y. Negative 16 plus 7 equals negative 9. Is this true? Negative 16 plus 7 is 9? It sure is. And so we know that's a good answer there. Okay? Even with the more difficult problems, look at number 5 here. I have x is negative 7, so wherever I see an x, I'm going to plug in negative 7. So I have positive 21 minus, I have an x, so negative 7 equals 28. Remember, this combination right here, my friends, is really a plus. Does 21 plus 7 equal 28? Yes, it does. So we know that's a good answer there. Okay, so it should always work out that way, and that's a way you can double check to make sure you're on the right track. And there we go, equations by adding and subtracting.